The Shibuya Incident is one of the best arcs in modern shonen manga, but if we're being honest, it's kind of a narrative mess. There's like 30 different characters, 20 different perspectives, 10 different subplots, and so much more going on. With all of this going on simultaneously, it is hard to keep everything organized and understandable, and it gets even worse when you add in the constantly changing timeline and the lightning fast pacing. But this messiness isn't exactly a bad thing. Before we get into why this narrative messiness works, I want to establish what I mean by a narrative mess. A narrative mess is basically when the story you are telling becomes hard to understand or process for one reason or another. In this case, it's because the author changes perspectives too often or without enough reason to do so. If you're telling a multi-perspective story like the Shibuya Incident, it's important to write yourself good, satisfying transitions. This can be seen in a lot of great anime and manga arcs, like the entirety of Hunter x Hunter, the Revolt arc of Attack on Titan, and even some arcs of Demon Slayer, which I generally think is not as good as Jujutsu Kaisen. The main difference between these anime and the Shibuya Incident is the amount of time spent on each perspective. The author of Jujutsu Kaisen, Gege Akutami, changes perspectives way more often and to way more characters than the aforementioned media. For example, in Hunter x Hunter's most recent arc, there are hundreds of characters and dozens of perspectives to keep track of. It is one of the most complicated arcs in shonen manga period, but even it is easier to follow than the Shibuya Incident at times. This is because the author gives every character time with their perspective. With the exception of the occasional overview chapter, each perspective gets at least half a chapter, if not a whole chapter. Compare this to the Shibuya Incident, where there are chapters where we spend 2 pages on one perspective, then switch to another, and then switch back to the first. It is unnecessary to switch this much in a complex situation, and it makes that complex situation even more complex. Now don't get me wrong, I understand why the author is doing this. He wants to establish where characters are in the short chapters of Shonen Jump, but I don't think his method is the best course of action. I think it actually does the opposite of what Gege wants, because it makes it harder to keep track of all the different narrative threads. Where's Nobara? What's Yuji up to? Is Nanami alive? What about Megumi? How are the disaster curses, or Chozo, or even Uraume? There are so many people and so many things to keep track of, it's less like a woven blanket and more like a bowl of spaghetti. But it works. The messiness of the Shibuya Incident works, and it works because it's supposed to be messy. It's like when you're making pasta and it's all messy at first and there's flour all over the counter and down the front of your apron and there's eggs leaking out of the well and your hands are all sticky and gross and everything just feels like a mistake. But then, as you continue to work with the mess and get further into the process, you start to create something beautiful, delicious, and rewarding. Did that make any sense? Let me show you what I mean. At the beginning of the Shibuya Incident, we have 6 main perspectives: Yuji's group, Nobara's group, Megumi's group, Maki's group, the Cursed Spirits, and Gojo. These are our eggs, and the curtains of Shibuya are the well within which the eggs sit. At first, everything takes place within these curtains, and the eggs start to mix with each other as well as break apart. First, Gojo and the Cursed Spirits combine, then Yuji and Mei break apart before Yuji mixes with Megumi. It's around this time that the barriers fall, and this is where the real mess begins. Nobara's death, Nanami's death, Sukuna's appearance and mass murder, the burning of Maki, all the moments that make Shibuya super intense and super depressing happen after the curtains fall. Much like how the mess that comes from making pasta happens the most after the walls of the well are mixed with the eggs. Is this analogy making sense to anyone? Yeah? Okay, good, because I'm gonna keep going with it. But first, I gotta ask you to subscribe. I know, it's cringe. But much like pasta, subscribers are good for the soul, both yours and mine. So please subscribe for your own good. While the dough kneading process starts out messy and stressful, the more you knead the dough, the more you have a cohesive ball. Chunks that were falling off are broken down and combined with loose flour again and again, knead after knead. It's surprisingly hard work, pressing the dough into the counter, gathering up the pieces that fall off, and repeating. But over time, the liquid from the eggs spreads out to the once dry dough until soon enough you have a smooth ball of pasta dough. This is quite similar to the Shibuya Incident. As the arc progresses, the multitude of plot clumps fall into each other. Maki's line falls into Jogo's, which falls into Sukuna's. Megumi's line falls into Toji and then also falls into Sukuna's. Nanami and Nobara's lines also congeal into Yuji's via their death, and of course Sukuna's line also falls into Yuji's. Yuji and Sukuna's perspective of the Shibuya Incident are basically the central pasta dough ball that all the other dough combines into. And once all the dough is together, it's time to cook. And that's exactly what the author does with the Yuji and Todo versus Mahito fight. This fight is one of the best, if not the best fight in the entire series. Not only does it hold a super important narrative purpose, but it also has some of the most high stakes, high energy combat in the manga. The paneling is immaculate. The action is both crystal clear and fluidly dynamic. Some of the best moments in the entire series come from this one fight. The stakes and meaning behind a fight has never been higher, and it's the perfect peak to this first major arc of Jujutsu Kaisen. But that's not the end of making pasta. You gotta put something on top. Whether it's cheese sauce, tomato sauce, or a pesto, you gotta have something to go with the pasta that just brings it all together and elevates the food to perfection. In this case, that's when everyone tries to fight Uraume and Kenjaku. While the last 3 chapters don't hold a ton of intense action, we do get a lot of information on what's going on and what will happen next. We get a look into the enemy's powers and a formal introduction to the last special grade, Yuki Tsukumo. We learn that this mysterious pseudo-ghetto guy is actually somehow involved with Chozo and Noritoshi Kamo. We also get to see the Kyoto students work together to fight Kenjaku, or at least attempt to. Things don't really go well for them. All of this is just the cherry tomato on top, the sauce that makes delicious pasta all the more better. But the progression of the plot is not the only thing that makes the messiness work. I honestly think Gege's art style also helps in this aspect. Gege's art style for Jujutsu Kaisen is often looked down upon for being unpolished or downright messy, and honestly, I get it. There are occasionally sequences that are hard to follow due to the art style, and it doesn't have the level of polish that some other manga have. But I do think the art style fits Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole perfectly, and fits the Shibuya Incident even better. The art style that Gege applies to the Shibuya Incident has this almost grungy feel. The way he draws blood, the way he draws facial scuff, and his line work all feel intentionally unpolished, and I love it. It fits the mess of Shibuya perfectly, and I think it reflects the grungy, dirty feeling present in the rest of the show as well. It's like the garlic bread you serve with pasta. While not a part of the actual pasta, garlic bread enhances the pasta consuming experience just by being a part of the meal. I think this is the perfect analogy for the art style in general, because it's rare that an art style will make or break a series, but it can affect the enjoyment and immersion of said series. The Shibuya Incident is the perfect mess. A mess of stories that run into each other by accident and create a disaster of monumental proportions. It works because it subverts expectations again and again with deaths, reveals, and an ending where the heroes actually lose. It is a peak that has yet to be met in the rest of the series, and a peak that is rarely met in shonen manga as a whole. And a large part of what makes it so unique and crazy fun to read is its messiness. Without that messiness, it just wouldn't stand out from the rest of the arcs to the same degree that it does. Sometimes, standing out from the crowd for the wrong reasons is a good thing, because that wrong reason is just a preconceived conception. This is not often the case. Standing out for the wrong reason is bad 99% of the time, like a bad performance or being noticeable in an environment where you don't want to be noticed. But this is the 1% of the time where standing out for a bad reason is actually good, because it gives the Shibuya Incident just enough individualism to stand out from all the other manga arcs being written right now. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments down below. I tried to go for a different approach to this video, so any feedback you have would be great. I appreciate you watching to the end as always, and please consider subscribing and following my new Twitter account for real this time. I actually got it working. Thank you again, and I'll see you next week for another video.